Welcome, everybody, to episode 180 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. If you need a beer, make sure you make it a Fatty Beer and let them know we sent you. And, of course, Buffalo Logo Apparel, one of the best spots to get all of your locally designed Bills and Sabres merchandise, from your shirts, your hats, your hoodies. They have it all at Buffalo Logo Co. on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Fatty Beer at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. Episode 180, we are less than 24 hours away from the NHL Trade Deadline. A lot to go over, and I am very, very happy to be joined by a good friend of the program, just a good friend in general, Jonny Lazarus. Lazzy, how are you, and how is the drive to Massachusetts?
I'm good, guys. Sorry if you can't really see me, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
We can kind of see you a little bit, so we're good. So I appreciate you giving us the time, especially when I know you're busy, especially over the with what's transpiring over the next 24 hours. Obviously, many of you heard already there during the second period, Emily Kaplan. I'm not sure if you saw this yet, Johnny.
I haven't seen anything of hockey tonight. So. Well, sure you're engaged on some type of social media, but Emily Kaplan made mention that JJ Peterka is in fact on the block and might be traded. A guy to keep an eye on. And I don't think she'd say something like that unless she had good information. Yeah, I've been in the car for like 2 hours, so I haven't been able to tune into any hockey or like check Twitter really while I'm driving. But I imagine Emily has some pretty strong sources to throw that out. What does Peterka have left on his contract? Is he an RFA? He's too young to be a UFA, right?
He's going into his RFA year. I think they would have to extend him on either a long-term or a bridge deal, if I'm not mistaken, right, Hurls?
Yeah, he's a pending RFA. Let me see what he has. It's just his rookie deal at the moment. So
yeah, he's young.
RFA after
so
young. Season. Yeah, he's 23. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. He just stripped Kucherov and sniped Vasilevsky. So as a Sabres fan, I personally would absolutely hate that. I think a lot of Sabres fans would hate that. But if we're talking return for any contending team, I think they would get a lot back for that. Of the players available, not named Alex Tuch, honestly, you probably get more back for Peterka than you would for Alex Tuch, given his age and his trajectory.
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with that. Tuch's not like the oldest guy. He's only like, 28?
I think he's 27 now.
Yeah, Tuch's like
I'm just more so talking.
Right,
yeah, I'm more so talking.
He's also due for a contract. JJ. So is JJ, but I guess that might affect a little bit. But Tuch does have one more year remaining on his deal. I personally don't want to trade Tuch because there are probably very few guys on this roster that I believe genuinely want to turn this around. I'm not saying, nobody wants to win in Buffalo, but at the end of the day, like, he's one of the guys that genuinely wants to be part of the solution here in Buffalo, and probably doesn't want to trade. He's from the area. He grew up next door to Tim Connolly. We've all heard these stories before, but JJ Peterka is an interesting name to throw out there because, again, he already matched his career high in points this season. He's turning into a phenomenal two-way player. He gets a lot of comparisons to guys like Braden Point. So I don't know. That was interesting to hear from especially Emily Kaplan. And other names on the block too, and I've been saying it for weeks. If Jason Zucker was not extended by today, you have to trade him. We already talked about Alex Tuch, and then you have guys like Henry Jokiharju. We know how valuable right-handed defensemen can be at the trade deadline. And then Bowen Byram, the return for the Casey Middlestat deal. Just your thoughts on the Sabres roster, Johnny, and just you as a guy who's spent his life in hockey and now covers it. What do you think needs to happen in order to turn this ship around?
Well, you guys know the Buffalo Sabres better than I do. I'm not going to sit here and kid ourselves here, right? Like, you guys are tuning into every Sabres game I watch here and there, just because honestly, like, right now, there's no reason to watch the Buffalo Sabres play hockey right now if you're covering it from a national perspective, because there's so many other teams that are more interesting. Just flat out honesty. Obviously, I watch from time to time because Tage is a friend of mine. I'm rooting for him always, and I love watching him play. And there are some young guys like Bowen Byram is a guy that I would have loved the Rangers to pick up at this deadline in a package for potentially like Braden Schneider. Braden Schneider's a young guy with the Rangers that I don't know what his future is going to be with the organization, just with the direction they've gone this year. And I've watched a lot of Bowen Byram. I'm curious to hear what you guys think after. But to me, the biggest problem with Buffalo, and Jeff Marek and I actually talk about this a lot, is that over the past 2 years, Buffalo has been in this rebuild and they've wanted to turn things around there. And I think what they've done is throw young guys into situations a little too early. And there hasn't necessarily been the proper leadership. I know Kyle Okposo is a great guy and probably was a great captain, but there wasn't enough of a supporting cast with experience to help these younger guys grow. And I think they were thrown into the fire a little bit too early, and it's hard to develop when you're taking on such a high responsibility at such a young age. And that's why, I think the guys like Reinhart, Eichel, the guys who left and went to other teams that have an older supporting cast have done well because they weren't relied on so heavily like they were in Buffalo. So if I'm the Sabres, I'm not trying to get younger. I'm trying to get older. You want guys with experience that can, help actually provide the leadership of the guys who have been there and done it before. Tage is certainly a leader in a lot of aspects, but Tage, I don't think, has played a single playoff game in his career. Nope. So there are all these guys. Obviously Tuck has, but Tuck was a young guy when he did it. But Buffalo's made up of a lot of guys that haven't really been there and done it. And I think it's so hard to turn things around when you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you're right. There's very minimal playoff experience on this team. Obviously, you got Jason Zucker, who we just mentioned, and I want your thoughts on that too.
Yeah,
Zucker's having a career season, and I want you to weigh on this two Hurls because I know we haven't gotten a chance to kick it over to you yet. Just your thoughts. Obviously, what your expectations of a Peterka return could be. We obviously don't want youth. We don't want guys that are on the same age as Peterka, but judging from his ceiling and what we've seen from him so far, Hurls, what do you want to see in return from Peterka? If it's a 1-for-1 deal, is it a package deal? What's your expectation of that? Because again, before, I think it was actually you guys that initially reported, it might've been Frank, Johnny, that Peterka was all of a sudden, kind of on the block.
Yeah.
What's the expectation there? Because you don't want to get swindled here like you did in the Jack Eichel trade and other trades before him. But there's a high ceiling for JJ, considering, what he's already been able to accomplish in the league.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trading Peterka, you got to get something that you don't have, similar to the Middlestat for Byram deal last year. I mean, Byram, they already had a similar player in Dahlin and Owen Power, but you got to get a pairing for Owen Power. He currently doesn't have a reliable defensive pairing. And if you're keeping Bowen Byram, as he's been really, really good with Rasmus Dahlin, I think you want somebody to pair with Owen Power on that second D pair. And if not, it's got to be a reliable forward that can somehow replace Peterka's production. He obviously set a career high, and he's on pace to break that this year. So it's got to be something reliable. I think it has to be a hockey trade. You're not trading Jason Peterka for a future or prospects or picks. It's got to be something that's a proven commodity. So that's what I would expect. And I mean, up until the past couple of weeks, I didn't think anybody thought that a Peterka trade was possible. No. So it's got to move the needle, just as the Jack Eichel trade did, just as the Middlestat trade did, even Savoy for Ryan McLeod. It's got to be something that's a proven commodity in the NHL. And I think most fans would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, could this also be a situation where, again, he's coming up on his RFA year? Maybe JJ has made it known to management that he doesn't want to be here long term. Could that also be a thing?
Yeah, I'm surprised to see a guy like him get moved. I don't know what his numbers are this year off the top of my head, but I know when the Rangers have played the Sabres, he's looked really good. Obviously a younger, skilled guy, a lot of upside. And listen, while I just made the statement of I think they need to get older, a young piece like that, I do think, is worth holding on to. But my curiosity with you guys, and not to get away from JJ Peterka, where was he drafted? What round was he? Was he a first rounder?
He was
beginning of the second, I think.
One of the first couple picks of the second round.
Yeah, 34th overall in 2020.
34th overall in 2020. I mean, listen, you guys are also seeing the returns for a lot of guys this year. You know, like if Peterka were to go to a team like, you know, where would be a good fit for him right now? Like
The Rangers?
Yes and no. I mean, like obviously, like the Rangers. I don't think the Rangers need to get like that much younger for right now. Like they're trying to build toward next year, I think. So I don't know if he'd be like the right fit for the Rangers, but like if I'm the Islanders, honestly, that's a guy I would love because the Islanders have a lot of older guys that, quite frankly, aren't getting them anywhere. So they need to put some youth into that lineup and try to build toward, you know, the next 3 years or so. Like I think that's where the Islanders should head. So, you know, if there was a way to, but again, like the Sabres aren't going to look for Brock Nelson or Anders Lee. Like what do they need those guys for? You know,
Yeah,
so
they're at
I don't know
not
what they would
the
do.
end of their career, but damn near close. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I just don't know in terms of Terka, like what's your return. I got to feel it. I'd have to imagine more than one piece is coming back in that trade. It's
I
not
think
like
so
a
too.
one deal. Like
I agree.
I've been very bullish on ever since I heard that like Quentin Byfield was available or could be available. I've always been a big fan of his. Just a big power center that, you know, can score and hit and just plays well in front of the net. And LA has kind of been dangling a couple of their pieces out there. Those are the types of kind of trades I guess I'm looking for. Like not guys that are too like already, you know, past their prime, like you said, but guys that are entering their prime, maybe.
Yeah, I think again, if Buffalo's goal is to make the playoffs, they need to bring in playoff players.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have many of those. So how can you expect a different result if you don't really have the guys to do it?
Yeah.
You know? Like look at Detroit. They've gone out and sure, you know, while they've been in a rebuild for honestly just as long as Buffalo has, they went and got older, experienced players. You know, and they might have not been the sexiest names. Obviously, Kane and Tarasenko are the two that stand out, but like, you know, they brought in some older guys to help them along the way. You know what I mean?
And I guess just the biggest roadblock when I say guys that are entering their prime, it's just tough. It's a tough situation with no movement clause, no trade clauses.
Yeah.
Like Buffalo is on a lot of lists, man. So you know, I sent it to Hurls earlier today. I worked all on a day, and I broke down every single team, every single player that did not have a no movement clause or no trade clause. There isn't really a lot of sexy names out there, unless you're entering, you know, restricted free agency. So, like, you're kind of handcuffed in that situation. You got to hope that you're willing to get a player to waive their no move clause to come to a team that's finished in the basement, you know, close to 14 years in a row. You know, 12 out of 14 years, let's say. A team that, you know, you look at the Jack Eichel situation, and you know teams are probably hesitant because of what happened with him and his neck, and well, you know, just the overall, just you know, drama and just dysfunction that has been, you know, the ownership and upper management. It's that's the biggest roadblock for me if you're trying to find a proven winner and a guy who, you know, has won in the playoffs.
I agree, and listen, until that happens, it's not going to change. So,
yeah,
I don't like again. I don't really know. I saw you write in our chat this morning, Duane. Like, what would Neil Smith do if he's the Sabres? Like, honestly, I didn't want to like ignore that question, but right now, like, it's not necessarily like relevant to talk about because Buffalo has been the same thing for the past, like you said, 14 years.
Yep.
You know, it's the same conversation over and over and over again. And you guys know this better than anyone. Like, it's exhausting to talk about when you don't see any sort of result or any sort of trend going in a positive direction.
Yep.
Yeah, and I personally think it would be even worse and more exhausting trading a guy like Peterka and seeing him have success somewhere else. I think it'd be a mistake. Personally, that's just like an example of a guy that obviously there's Tage and Dahlin that are unmovable. They're franchise cornerstones. But a guy like Peterka, a guy like Tuck, like those are guys you want to keep around and then build around them. They signed Greenway. I personally would like to keep Zucker because, as you said, he's been there before, and he's an older guy with some playoff experience. So, yeah, I personally would love to keep him. Do we still have him,
Johnny? think we lost Jonny here for a second until he comes back in. Me and Hurls, we can talk. Zucker obviously still not extended. I have to imagine that. And again, I know me and you are kind of on opposite sides of the fence here, but if he's not signed by noon tomorrow or midnight tonight, I think you just have to deal him.
No. I mean, I agree with that. I just more so I would like for them to get a deal done if possible.
Yeah, we have right now. I don't know. I can't do math between 9 and 4 p.m. tomorrow. And the deadline is like you have that much time to get Jason Zucker signed. And again, a guy who has won in the playoffs is having a career year. Obviously, he's getting paid $5 million for 1 year right now. I imagine a 3-year deal would probably be what Kevin Adams would be looking at, probably in the $6 to $7 million range with the cap going up. Jonny, your thoughts on that? Like, does Buffalo chance losing Zucker for nothing if they can't get him signed and hoping that they can get him signed at the deadline, or if he's not signed by midnight tonight or early tomorrow morning, you have to trade him?
I don't think you have to trade him. How old is Zucker right now?
32.
32.
I was just saying, early 30s. Listen, if he's having a career year and he's making a good amount of money in Buffalo, like maybe he wants to stay there for his own, like, I don't know if security is the right word, but listen, Jason Zucker is an important piece of that team, and maybe he has pride in being a part of the turnaround. And I don't know if he'd make that kind of money going somewhere else, So I don't know if they'd lose him for nothing. Like maybe it's a tough one for me to answer, to be honest. Because again, like I don't know him personally. I don't know how he's viewed in the organization, but I would think a guy like that, who's 32 years old, making $5 million a year, would probably be more beneficial for him personally to stick around an organization like that.
Yeah, I mean, just from experience, like he's viewed pretty fondly. It seems like even in his first year, he has a leadership role. Like the guys have really gravitated to him. Tage has talked about it. Everybody's talked about how much of an impact he's had, especially on the power play. So, yeah, if you can get the deal done, I mean, they did with Green Bay yesterday, right? Like he's a guy that's bounced around a little bit. He hasn't had much offensive success, but he's solid, tough, and physical in the bottom six. And he got 2 years at $4 million per. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a relatively good example of like these are the types of guys you need to build around. Like you're not getting anywhere with Beck Mallinston. Obviously, we traded a second-round pick for him and Sam Lafferty, and obviously traded waived Nicholas Aube-Kubel already. The fourth line didn't work, but you keep taking a stab at it, and I think Zucker is worthy of that personally. But yeah, I mean, if you can get a first-round pick for him, and he wasn't going to sign anyway, I think you also have to explore that as well.
But what does Buffalo need another first-round pick for?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Like, my opinion of it is that you flip it at maybe the draft to get better in that sense. I'm not trying to use this right now. That's the only reason I'm like you have 4 first-round pick. You have four former first-round picks currently in Rochester with no clear path to the NHL. You got Ryan Johnson, Isaac Rosen, who's leading the AHL in scoring. You have Noah Austin, who's really, I think he's been a point-per-game player now for a month. You have, Consta Helenius, their first-round pick last season. These guys don't really have, like, a clear path to the NHL unless Buffalo clears the roster a little bit. So my view on it is, if you're collecting assets for a guy like Zucker, and with the way things are shaking out with, the value at the deadline for a guy like Zucker, you might get more than a first-round pick. Who knows if you're willing to retain like $1 million or $2 off that salary cap, off his cap hit. I just have to think that, and it's going back to Johnny's point, like if like he values the money and the security, if he values the money and the security, wouldn't that money still be there for him in free agency? You know what I mean? Like it might still be there. It's nobody's. I mean, Kevin could have that conversation with him. We've seen it happen in the past with other teams. Like, hey, we want to try and get your value as best we can right now to help improve this team going forward. And this offer will be on the table for you when you come back. And if you are comfortable with playing here and trying to win here and turn this thing around, like we will give you a significant raise from that $5 million. That's also an option.
Ooh, quick update, especially for our Rangers reporter. Our Buffalo News reporter says Lance Lykowski, the New York Rangers are among the teams trying to acquire JJ Peterka from the Sabres. Rangers assistant coach Michael Pekka worked closely with Peterka during their time together in Rochester. There you go.
Johnny.
Yeah.
You want to get on the horn with our boy Pucks? Let's see what's happening.
Maybe they'd like give you guys Hoffman, honestly.
Who?
Brendan Hoffman. He was drafted. What year was Hoffman drafted? I think Hoffman might have been 2022. First round pick. He's had a couple strong years in the AHL, but hasn't necessarily jumped into the NHL and looked good. Maybe the Rangers are looking for an NHL player now and could give up like a guy with a lot of promise and upside in Hoffman.
Well, I'm looking at, like I said, I made that little cheat sheet earlier. There aren't a lot of names currently rostered players that are available with that don't have trade protection. The only guys that are on there really are Alexis Lafreniere, Will Coyle, Braden Schneider, and then Zachary Jones. And a couple of these guys are guys, with the exception of, Lafreniere and Coyle. The other, it's just because they're entering RFA. They don't qualify for trade protection yet. So I don't know. That is interesting. I don't know. It's got to be a hockey trade, right? And I have to think that maybe Braden Schneider, a right-handed defenseman, might be part of that deal. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I was saying before about Byram. Because the Rangers' top priority right now is to really reestablish their blue line, and they've done that in the past few weeks. Bringing in Will Borgen and signing him to an extension. They bring in Calvin Nahan the other day. They just picked up Carson Soucy today. So they're looking to revamp that blue line, and obviously we saw guys' departure this year like Trouba and Lindgren. Those were two pretty key pieces over the past few years. So that seems to be the priority, the top priority. If there is consideration in Peterka, I said, I don't think that he's a guy that they necessarily need right now, but I guess depending on what the return is, I wouldn't hate to have JJ Peterka.
I just think he's a fantastic 200-foot player, man, and he's already. I think he's on pace for close to 70 points this season.
He's speedy too.
Yeah, he's super fast.
Who's he playing on a line with right now in Buffalo?
They change it every game, but for most of the year, it's been Tage and Tuck.
But Tuck has kind of went back and forth between the first and second line. So, here's the thing: he hasn't missed a beat with no matter who he's played with. He fits right in. He finds a way to make it work, and he's just about had chemistry with anybody he's ever played. The previous 2 years, it was with the kid. We call it the kid line with Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, and Dylan Cousins. And they were fantastic for us up until Cousins, got the concussion from Hathaway. That's another name, Dylan Cousins. A lot of teams have been calling in on him. There was speculation about Detroit, and then the Vancouver Canucks. There was speculation with them. A lot of teams seem to have interest in him, and he's one of those guys that we talked about earlier. I'd be scared to. I've always been a big advocate of Dylan Cousins, but I'm at the point where I just think he's a guy that if he wants to get to the point in his career, get to where he was when he got that big contract, it just might not be in Buffalo anymore.
Yeah, that seems to be. He's had a pretty disappointing season, no?
His past 2 years have been pretty brutal compared to 2022, 2023. But just as a fan,
I'm also going to apologize, guys. I've been in a really shitty service spot, so I know I keep going in and out. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're
good, man. Your thoughts, Hurls, on the Dylan Cousins situation. Again, there was. I forget. Elliot Freeman all but confirmed on his 32 Thoughts podcast that the smoke around Buffalo and Detroit before the Four Nations was real. I don't know if maybe that's something they might come back to. Obviously, there was so much smoke around Elias Pettersson in Buffalo. Apparently, according to the dirt sheets, I guess the NHL dirt sheets you can call them. There was an offer made by Vancouver, Pettersson for both Owen Power and Dylan Cousins, and Buffalo said no. I'm not sure how much truth there was to that. But Dylan Cousins, like, what's his value to you, in your opinion, Lazzy? Just a guy who I used to call him a more skilled version of Mike Pekka, and I think Pekka would have probably been agreed. Just the way he played the game, he was physical, he wasn't afraid to fight.
Mm-hmm.
You can send him out there to shut down a top line, and he has been, night and day a different player, since his 30-goal season. But just your thoughts on that, and a team that might need a guy like Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, right away I kind of think of New Jersey. With what they're going through right now, I think they still need. I mean, I think Cousins is a top 6 guy. I know obviously the past couple of years, like you guys are saying, it's been a little bit disappointing, but I think he's an effective guy that you can have as a second. He's a center, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like a second line center. Yeah, I mean, I think he's an impactful dude. And obviously these past few seasons in Buffalo, listen, it's when you lose as much as the Sabres have, it takes a mental toll. Especially for a guy that signed a contract like him that probably doesn't feel he's living up to it. Like, it can eat away at you a little bit. Like the mental battle. And again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've played in the NHL and made a lot of money, but I've definitely had high expectations on myself as a player, and I failed to live up to it. And it's tough. It really eats away at you. And it affects your performance on the ice. It affects your life away from the rink. So that change of scenery, like, I think Cousins can get back to he's not an older guy that's past his prime, right? Like, there's still such a high ceiling for him and a lot of promise that if put in a new situation, you can channel that again.
For sure. If we're talking Cousins or Peterka, I would very much rather keep Peterka. And that's
I agree.
Based upon watching this team for the past 3 years and each of their developments, like, Cousins really hasn't been the same since he got his belt.
I think Peterka's more skilled too, honestly.
For sure. He's got a better shot, better finishing ability. He's faster. I think, is at least recently, he's been a little bit tougher. Cousins hasn't been the same since he got in the fight with Hathaway last season. And it seems like he's, like, obviously the mental aspect that you said, like, yeah, losing's tough. And if the puck's not going in, you start to question everything about what made you get to that 30-goal mark 2 seasons ago in the first place.
Yeah.
So I totally
How many goals do you have right now?
Like 15, maybe less.
Yeah.
It's been a tough year. And he's just generally, he's had a few good games, but he has looked lost for most of the season. And, yeah, I mean, it could be one of those situations where he goes to the Panthers or the Devils or a legitimate organization with veteran players, and not as much pressure is put on him, as you said, and he could thrive in that situation because the pressure is a little bit off. But I would much rather keep Peterka, that's for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
I agree with that too.
Before we let you go here, Johnny, and again, I appreciate the time you've given us. The one guy we kind of touched on a little bit, Bowen Byram. Obviously the key return in the Casey Middlestat trade. I think he's been fantastic when paired with Dahlin. His numbers are a little different when he doesn't play with Dahlin, but again, a guy that has, we've definitely won that trade. Casey Middlestat hasn't really found his place in that lineup in Colorado. Apparently they're already trying to trade him. They're already trying to trade him again. Here's the thing. I don't think Buffalo wants to deal.
I'd say it's hard. It's hard to say you won that trade if both guys aren't even going to stick around.
Well,
I'd say both teams lost that trade.
Well, yes, but I think Buffalo is leaning towards trading him because it's going to cost them probably more than the Owen Power deal. It's not for a lack of performance. They gotten more out of Bowen Byram than Colorado has gotten out of Casey Middlestat. There's no doubt about that. I think they just.
But both teams haven't really gotten shit though.
Yeah. Oh no. Absolutely. No. I agree. I just think also in a Bowen Byram trade, you're going to get more in that return than you would if they do indeed trade Casey Middlestat.
I agree with that.
Thoughts on him? I know you like him in the Rangers lineup. What a return for him would look like, especially if a deal like that is done with a team like the Rangers. Like you mentioned Schneider, but I don't think Buffalo is looking to, unless it's a right-handed defenseman coming back. But I think they're looking to add to their top 6 in a Bowen Byram trade. What would a return for you look like for a guy like him with his pedigree, and obviously already has a Stanley Cup ring and has gone the distance?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the biggest thing with Byram is the way he skates. You know, he's so fast up and down the ice in the offensive zone. Like, he's almost like a rover, right? Like, he goes below the goal line. He has the ability to burn a player wide with speed that not many defensemen can really do on the offensive side of the puck. I think he's got strong vision, a solid shot, moves well laterally. Probably he's not like overly physical, but I think he isn't afraid and doesn't back down for his size, right? Like he's not a bigger guy, but I don't think he plays as small as he might be. What is he, like 6'1"? Is he 5'10"? What's his size?
He is 6'1", 190. Yeah.
Yeah, 6'1", like 6'1", 190. Sure, it's like a little, I guess, taller than like the average player, but he's not necessarily the bulkiest guy. But I don't know. I love his style of play, and I think the Rangers could use the speed in the back end. They were a little bit slower, and obviously the Rangers have not found someone necessarily that can take over their second power play unit. Even though Zach Jones has done a good job lately, he's not an every night guy in the lineup for whatever reason, and I don't agree with that. But that's just how he's been treated. And Braden Schneider would probably be in that return for Buffalo, and that is the right-handed shot defenseman you were talking about. And then I think maybe you throw in a guy, like Brennan Hoffman. Hoffman is a guy that's very highly touted, but from what I've seen so far in the NHL, I know it's been a small sample size. I don't necessarily know if he's the guy the Rangers need right now for what they want to achieve right now. 3 years from now, Hoffman could be that impact player, but this is a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup like as soon as they can. And a guy like Byram helps you, I think, quicker than a guy like Hoffman does. So I could see it being Schneider, Hoffman, and maybe like a late, fourth round pick or whatever, which I think would be a solid return for Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If we got a legitimate right-hand defenseman who would be on the second pair with Power, or I mean any combination of the sort, along with the top prospect and a pick for Bowen Byram, after only trading Casey Middlestat 1-for-1, I personally would be pretty.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Agreed. Again, Johnny, thanks again for coming on with us. Love your brother, and please drive safe on your way to Mass. What game are you covering?
I'm doing UMass versus Maine tomorrow and Saturday, back to back.
That's awesome, man. I envy you so much. Getting to watch as much college hockey and cover as much college hockey as you do. Nothing quite like it. So.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks, Duane. Thanks, Hurls. Seriously, appreciate you guys.
All right, buddy.
If you want to catch Jonny Lazarus, you can find him at his podcast with Daily Face-Off, Morning Cup of Hockey. Sorry.
You're good.
Do you guys go live just about like 5 days a week?
We're Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m. And tomorrow we're actually doing a trade deadline live panel with a lot of us, like Frank Saravelli, Tyler Remchuk, Nate Thompson, Carter Hutton, Irfan Ghaffar, myself. It's a loaded panel from 11 to 4 tomorrow, so we're gonna be going all day.
Carter Hutton, our boy.
And Matt Larkin as well. What's up?
Is he a good analyst, Carter? I mean,
I fucking love Hutz, dude. He's the man.
He was like so well spoken with every single social media thing he did for the team. Like he was the man.
He's a great guy.
You think you can put in a word for two goalies, one mic sometime?
1,000%. Yeah.
Hell yeah. There we go.
He loves telling stories about Olmark and stuff. So.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely put in a good word for you guys.
So appreciate it, man.
Should be a reminder.
I will, man. Please drive safe and have a blast this weekend. And again, you guys can catch him. Is it at J Lazzy? J Lazzy.
You got it. Yep, you got it. 23. You got it. Yeah.
23. Yep. And of course at the Daily Face-Off. Thanks again. Thanks a lot, Johnny.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a good night. All right.
You too, buddy. Great interview there with Jonny Lazarus. Again, a great friend of the program, just a good friend overall. I played against him in the Chicklets Cup a couple times. I am not proud to say he absolutely made mincemeat of me. Absolutely threw my jock up in the stands once or twice. I played D and roller, and he embarrassed me quite a few times. So it was a fantastic college player and two-time Chicklets Cup champion. So, just your thoughts, Hurls, so far. And obviously we got the news about Paterka. We're how many hours away from the deadline? I mean, is the game over yet now? I know they're losing now.
6-5 Lightning, of course. Yeah, I mean it's tomorrow at 1, so like 16 hours or whatever.
Well, the deadline is that 1?
1 Pacific.
Oh, 1 Pacific. Okay, so 4 o'clock my time. I was like, but no, it's 1 o'clock. Yeah, Sabres were winning 5-3. And of course, I haven't really seen a ton of the goals against because obviously I was preparing for this interview. But from what I can see on social media, UPL is not having a good night.
Well, I think to make it 5-4 or tied it at 5-5, it was a backdoor one-timer for Gensel's Hattie. Couldn't do anything about that. In front, yeah, I mean I've seen a few of them. I didn't watch the first period myself, so I haven't seen a lot. But anytime you give up 6 goals, no matter what your defensive coverage looks like, I mean, it's a really good team, but yeah, not great. And I do think it's a confidence issue right now, whether it's injury or confidence. UPL is not at his best at the moment. And that is concerning, to say the least, because he has not been super consistent throughout his career. Obviously, he's still young and, there's some development needed and obviously better defensive zone coverage. We all know that. But, yeah, hasn't been good lately. And hopefully he'll be able to figure that out over the course of the last month or so.
Yeah, I agree. Rasmus Dahlin, I think he's got like 16 points in his last 12 games, I think I read.
He's been on fire.
He's been incredible. I've been on board with you with a top 5, top 3 defenseman in the league. And I could only imagine if he had like a stable.
If he had a top 5 power play unit, he'd be a 90-point player.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. He'd be in the Norris conversation every single year. Single year.
Yeah, I personally don't think he's that far behind Cal McCarr and Quinn Hughes. That's how I feel about him.
Yeah, obviously Cal McCarr is the big benefit of playing with one of the best players in the world, McKinnon, and
he's also
power play matters in his numbers for sure.
But he's a unicorn type talent, and I think Dahlin is too. But and the fact that Dahlin's actually doing this with not only a really bad power play unit, but he's for the most part has been as good defensively as he's been. All of his numbers suggest that he is an elite player. And I saw someone say earlier that we're wasting his prime, and we absolutely are. I don't think we're wasting Josh Allen's prime because we are getting very close, but I treat it the same way. They were both drafted in 2018. They haven't come – well, the Sabres haven't come close to the playoffs, or not close 1 year in Dahlin's tenure. But, yeah, I mean, I in the same way that the defense and coaching, I think, are letting Allen down in the playoffs, the organization is letting Rasmus Dahlin down. And he does need some time to mature as a captain. He is still young. I think we forget that he's 24, 25 years old, and he's played 7 years in the league already. So it's pretty wild to think about that because he's got 10 good years left. But gotta keep building. Gotta surround Tage and Dahlin. These are 2 superstars that are on this team, and not a lot of time can you say that your team, which is at the bottom of the East, has 2 legitimate superstars on the team. So silver lining, if anything, you have that, and then whatever happens over the next 16 hours hopefully supports that. That's all I can say at this moment.
Yeah.
Trading Peterka will not do that.
It's definitely tough to see reports about guys like Peterka.
Unless you got Keandre Miller back, or something really, really good back from the Rangers. I would not be happy with trading Peterka to the Rangers.
Yeah, I look at that, and Schneider would have to be coming back as part of the deal. I know he's only 22, but he's a right-handed defenseman. And he's very highly touted.
But that's the thing. I wouldn't even be happy with Schneider.
No, well, it has to be that plus. But what's the plus?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I would think it would have to be like Keandre Miller. It would have to be someone that's better than Braden Schneider.
Yeah,
it has to be somebody that's more established.
But he also plays the left side.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to do something that is more impactful than a 22-year-old defenseman who hasn't really established his footing in the league. that well yet. Peterka's, like you said, he's on pace for 70 points. And his development since 2020, even when we drafted him in 2020, that was viewed as a steal. I think they traded up to get him because he fell a little bit, and it was viewed as this unbelievable draft pick. And it turns out that was probably the best pick of that draft for the Sabres. I think that was the same draft as either Cousins or Quinn.
Yeah. But I remember how crazy excited, because they did obviously the Beyond Blue and Gold or the Sabres Embedded video on that draft. And I remember seeing how excited Kevyn Adams was that he was still there. And I think, that was during COVID. So, you have to think that maybe that played part of it. Maybe a lot of people weren't able to get their eyes on JJ Peterka. And that's why
that draft specifically, it was pretty difficult to view international players leading up to it, at least at the end of their seasons. But everything about him as a prospect has turned out to be true. And I think he's even exceeded expectations. So if you're trading a franchise centerpiece like that, it's got to be for something significant.
Yeah,
I was looking at the Rangers roster, and the only player I was excited about was Artemi Panarin.
Yeah, and you're not trading Artemi Panarin.
Exactly. So, and I mean, Keandre Miller obviously plays the left side, but he's a legitimate top 2, top 3 defenseman. So I don't know. You got to replace that production somewhere. This team has had struggle scoring goals recently. So if you're trading him for anyone, it's got to be either a right-handed defenseman who's on that top pair or that second pair, or somebody who can either very, very high pedigree, like Johnny was talking about with Brandon Hoffman. I personally never heard of him, but former first-round pick. It's got to be someone that can eventually produce next season, because you cannot trade Peterka for anything less.
Yeah. And again, I meant, if you want to pull up that cheat sheet I sent you that has literally all the names of players that don't have no move clauses, and most of the ones that don't have no move.
Even Lafreniere, I wouldn't want.
Yeah, he's just been, nothing but in terms of if that's a guy that was taken in the middle of the first round or the end of the first round, nobody's complaining. But he was a first overall pick, kind of like the criticism that Owen Power gets here in Buffalo.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the same draft.
No. But Power and Lafreniere, no.
No. The 2020 NHL draft was Lafreniere.
Oh, okay, yeah.
1 overall, Byfield number 2, and then Peterka 34.
I mean, I'm looking if you're
Jack Quinn number 8.
I know that there was some. You look at Detroit. I mean, I when I looked up and down, all the depth charts, and these are all just rostered players. These are not players that are on. In the farm system or overseas or playing juniors still. These are all rostered players currently under contract playing in the NHL right now. I mean, the Detroit Red Wings probably had the most players available. You got guys like Andrew Kopp, Justin Hull, Maurice Sider. But again, most of these guys don't have the no movement clause because they're entering RFA status and they haven't played enough yet to qualify for, trade protection. Marco Kasper, Vladimir Tarasenko, Lucas Raymond, but Detroit's not trading Lucas Raymond. I included everybody on there, even if they were unrealistic.
I mean, if you were to somehow get the Rangers to give up Lafreniere, the number 1 overall pick, he was viewed as a generational type prospect, not generational, but really, really elite prospect at the top of that draft. Something I would consider, given that he is 23. You know what I mean? Not a culture change, but just a scenic change just for both guys, right? Peterka's outperformed Lafreniere throughout his career to this point. They're the same age. And if you're going to get Lafreniere and something back for a guy that went 33 picks later in the same draft, that's something I could at least convince myself, that's good value, right? That's at least something I could get behind, but anything else is unacceptable. And I hope Kevyn Adams knows that.
I look at the LA Kings players that are currently available. Alex Turcotte, he's 24 years old, plays left wing, but also plays center here. He's a $700,000 cap hit. He's got 21 points in the season, former first round pick. Quentin Byfield, 22 years old. Obviously, he just signed that big extension, but it was made known last week that LA is opening to trading him if the deal is right. I've always been I'm very bullish on a guy like Byfield. I think that he has a lot to offer. I know players we say we don't want to get younger, but I don't think like you're taking steps backwards by going to get a guy like Quinton Byfield. Now, if you're trading a guy like JJ Peterka for Quinton Byfield, then you need more coming back, right? In my opinion, from LA. Even though he's a former second overall pick. It's not a 1-for-1 deal. Then you have guys like Brant Clark. Also was, I think, I could be mistaken, but they were essentially saying that he might be available. Like, I'm not sure what direction LA is heading in. I'm not sure where they are currently in the playoff standings, but kind of surprised to see those names be made available by LA. And then another defenseman was Jordan Spence, $1.5 million cap hit, 20 points in 58 games played, but another right-handed defenseman.
Yeah, that 2020 draft was really, really good. Tim Stützle, number 3 overall.
Yep.
He has the most points from that draft. Then it's Raymond, Jarvis. Lafreniere actually has slightly more than Peterka. He's got 183 points in 360 games. Then it's Mercer, Lundell, and Peterka's number 7 from that draft. Just above Byfield, just above Perfetti. He's above Marco Rossi, obviously above Jack Quinn. So yeah, I don't know, man. And Braden Schneider was in that draft as well. So it seems like a lot of guys being rumored, specifically 5 years after their draft year, which I guess makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty wild that I mean, they're obviously getting calls given the situation that they're in. But Peterka and Tuck, as I mentioned, are 2 guys that I would drive a really, really hard bargain if I was Kevin Adams.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 guys. I'm not going to sit there and say they're cornerstone players, but you have a guy like Tuck who's been nothing. He's one of the first guys that the media talks to in the locker room. You know what I mean? Like, he's clearly a leader in that locker room. It takes a lot to go in front of the camera during seasons like this and just try and give legitimate answers, to not just be cliche and say the same old thing over and over again. But Tuck is that guy. He's not afraid to answer tough questions and be brutally honest. And then JJ, just a guy who has exceeded expectations. And I don't even think, we can say he's entering his prime, but I think there's a lot more left in the bone there. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we haven't seen anything remotely close to the level that JJ Peterka can play at. Another team that I saw that had some interesting name. One interesting name I'll throw out there that I was surprised didn't have trade protection at all. And that was from Ottawa, Drake Batherson. He's got 49 points in 61 games. He's only making $4.9 million. Very surprised. I think out of all the players that are realistic that I looked through today, I think he's near the top of the list, right? Like, he's 26 years old, right wing. He's a UFA in 27, 28, so he's got a few years left on his deal, just making under $5 million a year, and 49 points in 61 games on a bad hockey team. Really surprised he has absolutely no trade protection. Yeah,
I mean, it's tough with a team like the Senators sometimes, or maybe he didn't necessarily need it, right? Like, he signed it in 2021 when he was 21 years old or 22 years old. So who knows what the situation was then. He signed a 6-year, $30 million deal. Yeah, I mean, it's a $4.9 million cap hit. I have him on my fantasy team, and he's been a pretty consistent point producer the whole year. Yep. And he's a goal scorer. But the Senators, I mean, they've been up and down, but they're at least in the wild card conversation. Like, I don't know if that's a guy that you're gonna want to give up. And as far as the Sabres are concerned, like, I don't think they're going to be trading within the division. That's
no,
for sure.
But if you're trading in your division, it has to be a win on both sides, right? You're not sending a guy like Peterka to a team like Ottawa unless you're getting something very similar in return. And I'm just really dumbfounded that Peterka is even on the block right now.
Well, I wouldn't say the block. I would say it's more so teams are calling and the Sabres are listening, right? Like, It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're actively shopping him. They obviously love him, and how could you not, given the game that he's played and like obviously coming in such a good draft and being the 7th overall player up until this point in a draft of really, really good players. So no, I don't think they're actively shopping him, but given the situation that they're in, like you got to listen to everybody. And if somebody's going to overpay for something that you eventually think is going to, I mean, I don't trust Adams and if Pagula's involved to know if it's going to help our team at this point, but something you got to at least listen to. 154 left. Sabres to the power play. Empty net.
Yep. 6-on-4. So we can do a little bit of a what is it? What do you want to call follow along here with the last 2 minutes of the game? I noticed you moved your. I wish I could move myself to the front of the TV. Actually, no, I can. What am I talking about? An ESPN game, but 6-on-4 right now with less than 2 minutes left. Thompson got dumped, so they're on the power play. Let's see if they can pull out here and tie it 6-6. It's been an exciting game, back and forth, very chaotic to say the least. So
yeah, well. Aside from Darlene's empty net goal the other night, the team has been pretty bad with the net empty.
Yep.
And this is also a power play situation, so I don't necessarily trust them that much in that. But there is going to be a lot of open ice. And
what do we got on the ice? Darlene, Tuck, Tage. Looks like Paterka taking the face off. Who's on the other?
That's McLeod taking the face
McLeod
off.
taking the face off.
Yeah, Paterka
taking the face off. Kulik.
And then Kulik, yeah. And
you got to win that face off. That was close.
Oh, no.
Darlene. Let's see here. I like that dump. I got a good dump. Oh. You gotta win that battle, man. You gotta win that battle. That's the game. Oh, wow. Oh, nice play there by Paterka. I was ready to call it a game right there.
You're a little bit ahead of me.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
All right. Should I just shut up then?
Yeah, maybe just don't do play-by-play, but let's see if I can, given that I'm behind.
I can't believe we just didn't get a penalty there.
Oh, boy. Get on that.
Come on. Oh, come on. That was a stupid shot by Tage. You shot her. Like, what are we doing here, dude?
Into a
They take their timeout yet?
I think they just did, yeah.
Okay. What a play by JJ, man.
That's a really, really nice.
That's
play.
why that's a thing, man. That's a guy who's just doing well, and like that's a team that's last in the East, diving poke check to try and preserve. Yeah. I don't want to trade it.
No, neither do I. I said recently that he was one of my untouchables. So
let's see here. $30 seconds left.
Oof. Oh, another penalty. Gotta let him touch it.
Give it to him. Just give it to him.
Oh, no.
They put themselves offsides.
Oh, no.
And that comes all the way down, doesn't it?
Probably. That's a tough situation because Tampa has no interest in touching that puck.
None whatsoever. That's why you just got to fire it on net. From wherever you are, just fire it right on net. I got him right up in the fucking shit. Oh, Jesus. Come on.
Well, McLeod already has a couple teeth missing, so I'm sure he can handle that.
Sure, he'll be all right. In case you're still watching, we're watching along in the last 17 seconds of the third period. Oh, it is an offensive zone draw. Look at that. Well, I guess. Well, does the penalty negate that then? It's an automatic offensive zone draw.
Yeah.
Or the offsides, because that was they put themselves offsides.
It's probably, I imagine, what's happening.
Gotta win a draw here.
Fucking drop the puck. Hate when refs do that.
I know.
There we go. Nice block. Oh, boy.
Oh, come on!
That's a good block. That's a ballsy fucking block from
Oh my God.
a guy who makes his living doing that, Eric Cernak. So not surprised.
Such a beauty too, man. He's such a cornerstone defenseman. Edmund and Cernak on the same blue line, man.
Oh God, that's good. I mean, he just absolutely sells out. Oh, take it right to the back.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
How much did that hurt, man? That
so
like
much.
Where are they in the standings right now, Tampa?
Oh no, that's off his pants, I think. They're in second or third in the Atlantic, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like they have a playoff spot locked up. So I mean, man, come on.
Well, I mean, at this point for us, I don't want them to lose. I'm not gonna root for a tank, but
no, but I mean, this is the sexy draft class, man. It's a very sexy draft class.
No, I'm not gonna get too upset about losses at this point either.
No, definitely not. I guess we're just gonna go right into the post game here.
I have a playoff hockey game myself in about an hour and a half, so I do not have too much longer, unfortunately.
No, it's fine. Walt is actually gonna join us.
Cool. Well, he can replace me because I would have been out regardless. Unfortunately, gotta go get a win. But I think that was good. Hopefully they do not trade JJ. I guess we'll see. The next 16 hours should be interesting. Losing 5 straight before the deadline definitely promotes something potentially happening. And I guess we'll see. I mean, I would only be happy with something that is an overpay by who's ever trading for Peterka, because clearly he's not even a prospect. He's a legitimate top 6 star. I mean, I wouldn't say star, but he's a top of the lineup player with potential, with star potential, especially on a good team, in a good situation with better line mates, with more consistency, with less pressure on him. As Johnny said, I think a lot of these guys have been thrown into the fire way too early, and he's one of them that's exceeded those expectations and hasn't really folded under pressure. He's consistently produced throughout the past 3 seasons, and he obviously has the tools that we've all seen. So it's got to be somebody really good if you're trading him, and if they do, and we don't get that, then I think that's another reason to call for Kevin Adams' job. So we shall see.
And you saw you saw him sitting up there, obviously in the press box, kind of by his lonesome. And then shortly after that is when Emily Kaplan, I'm assuming she must have spoke to somebody in Sabres management or around close to the team, because I mean, someone like Emily Kaplan is just going to outright say something like that without having it on like good authority that, teams are calling at the very, like you said, at the very least, teams are at least calling on him.
Yeah. I mean, if I were any team in the NHL, I would be calling on every single player not named Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. So, and they probably are doing that as well, if we're being honest. But yeah, I am interested. I will go out on a limb and say that nothing's going to happen, because that's typically what happens with this team. We're going to get our hopes up for something big, and then it's going to be a whole lot of nothing. But who knows? They're in a unique situation. Obviously, they don't want to completely blow it up, but what they have right now is not working, and it hasn't worked for a long time. So maybe it's in their best interest to make a splashy move like that. So we'll see. All right, I got to bounce.
All right, I'm going to stick around with you guys. I know Walt's going to be joining us here very soon. I'm going to send him the link, and you're just going to have me here for a moment. But, yeah, Sabres lose 6-5 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. in a very exciting game that just ended tragically. So, Hurls, you can take off. I'll take over from here. I guess this has been episode. Nope, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying episode 181, right?
Well, no,
180. 180. And probably 181 following whatever happens in the next 16 hours.
Well, we're going to be live. Well, at least me for the most part. I'm not sure what your availability is tomorrow, but going to be a lot of content coming tomorrow.
It is none, unfortunately, but I will follow along as best as I can.
Okay. Yeah, so deadline 4 p.m. tomorrow. Good luck at your game tonight, Hurls. And like I said, I'm going to stick around. So.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Later.
See you guys later. Yeah, so Sabres, I know right now the San Jose, Colorado game's on ESPN. Obviously just started. Sabres lose 6-5. Again, a game where they had a 2-goal lead. You had goals from Tuch, Paterka, Krebs, Dahlin. I'm not sure who had the other goal. If somebody in the chat can let me know. But a game that Buffalo should have won. You had a 2-goal lead in the second period, and then your goaltending let you down. Your team, your defense, everything has kind of let you down. Sabres haven't had any issue, right, scoring goals this season, like at all. So to me, it's like the deadline, less than 24 hours away. Like, how do you fix this? What pieces are you moving out? What pieces are you bringing in? Because as I said before, it's difficult to get to play. Players don't want to come here. Players aren't willing to waive their moving clause. I legitimately spent most of today just team by team. Who doesn't have a no move clause? Most of the players that don't on every individual team are players that haven't even hit their RFA status yet. Those aren't players that teams are always willing to part with because they're young. They're developing pieces. And those aren't necessarily the pieces that a team like Buffalo wants, right? You want team players that are ready to win now, that are, entering their prime or in their prime. It's hard to get players like that willing to waive a no movement clause to come to Buffalo. You know what I mean? Unless you're a team like Anaheim, but even in that case, like, why are you going to want to leave the sun in the beach to come play in Buffalo? I don't know. It's a tough call, but we're going to be joined by Walt from the Charging Buffalo. You've been better known as Sabermetrics here momentarily. We're going to transition right into I'll hang up and listen. But again, Sabres lose 6-5. Had a good chance there at the end of the game to tie it. They had almost a power play, a 6-on-4 advantage because they pulled UPL for almost 2 full minutes, and then for 17 seconds they had a 6-on-3 advantage. Just couldn't get anything going, unfortunately. So Buffalo drops I think that's their 4th straight, or is that their 5th straight? I don't even know. I want to say that's their 5th straight, right? Peanut Gallery, I want to say. So yeah, we're gonna transition right here into I'll hang up and listen. You don't have to go anywhere. Sabres post game, obviously starting now. And again, join here very shortly. I'm just sending out the invite right now to our boy Walt with Sabermetrics. So, yeah, we had Jonny Lazarus on with us earlier. I don't know. So I'm actually just seeing some of the highlights here from the game. And Dylan Cousins doing nothing well. His captain is absolutely getting mauled in front of UPL. If that doesn't get you a one-way ticket out of Buffalo, I don't know what does. That's insanity. That's incredibly embarrassing. Wow. I don't even know what to say. That's the first time because I was preparing for our interview with Jonny. So I wasn't able to see a lot of that third period. But again, are you surprised? I mean, again, I see that and I need Dylan Cousins gone tonight. Like, how do you not stick up for your captain? A guy who hasn't given up on anything this season, a guy who has still played balls to the wall every game, even when you're staring 14 years, no playoffs in the eye. How are you not selling out for your captain there, defending him, coming to his defense. That drives me absolutely insane. I don't know what to make of that. That's just flat out embarrassing. So that's the first time I actually I saw that clip. So straight up embarrassing. But I just want to welcome you all to I'll Hang Up and Listen, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with over 300 beers to choose from at all of their locations. If you need a beer, make sure you make it a Fatty Beer and let them know that Two Goalies, One Mike sent you. And as always, Buffalo Logo apparel, whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies, they have the blue collar brand at Buffalo Logo. I'm wearing this hoodie, one of their hoodies right now, the most comfortable hoodie I've ever owned. You can grab one of our hats, the RJ cap, snapback, right at Buffalo Logo Co. on Instagram and Twitter, buffalogo.com. You can find Fatty Beer at Fatty Beer on Instagram, on Twitter, fattybeer.com. Joining the program is our boy Walt. Oh, you know him better as Sabermetrics from the Charging Buffalo. Walt, I saw you tweet earlier. We will be talking Sabres hockey tonight, huh? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. Talking about the Sabres.
Like always.
It's another, and I mean, it was an exciting game, high-scoring game, but I think the biggest news coming out of that game was definitely what Emily Kaplan reported, right, about JJ Peterka.
Yeah, no, I think just hearing that, and I mean, really hearing how Kevin Adams is trying to make a big move, I think that's, I mean, kind of a little exciting as Sabres fans, because it felt like the last few days we're hearing about how this is going to be a really quiet deadline, about how there might not be that many moves. And I mean, I think a lot of the worry is that there won't even be that many moves this offseason too, and they'll try to run back a similar roster. So I guess it's hopeful to hear that they're at least maybe working on something behind the scenes, even though having beat Peterka might not be the most ideal player to move. But I mean, I just like hearing that there's some movement. Yeah.
To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, what are we doing here if we're trading JJ Peterka? He's like I wouldn't even say he's even under his prime yet. He's what, 22, 23 years old? Like, yeah, he's already eclipsed his previous career high. I don't know. Is that a move that if it goes wrong, that has to get your GM fired? Right?
I mean, yeah. I think your mic turned off. I don't know. I think you're muted. All right, there we go.
There we go. I don't know. My mic is acting funny. But, I mean, that would – if you're trading your best – who will be your arguably best two-way player or your most dynamic players, if that doesn't work out for you, I mean – I don't know. I almost want to fire him just for even entertaining the idea of trading Peterka. But you have to do something with this roster, man, because I spent all day putting together kind of like a trade deadline cheat sheet, right? So I found every single player, rostered player. I didn't go through the farm system. I'm not that committed. But every single rostered player on every single team who doesn't have a no movement clause. And 90% of this list are players like Peterka entering their RFA year. So there aren't a lot of players that you could trade for that are going to immediately make your team better tomorrow, that have won, have pedigree already. These are guys much like Peterka who haven't even entered their prime yet. And, the biggest name on this list, and again, he's already signed long-term, and I know we've heard his name a lot, and it's very unrealistic, but it's probably like Brady Tkachuk. You always hear his name getting thrown out in trade rumors. Does he want to be in Ottawa? Is he on his way out? But like, other than that, man, like there isn't a single name out there that I look at. I'm like, oh my God, I need to have that player.
Yeah, it's kind of tough at this point. I guess, I mean, probably the team I've been focused on most is the LA Kings, because we heard Nick Kyprios talk about Byfield potentially being available, and then even rumors about Brant Clark being available. So, I mean, with them shopping those two really good young guys, and I mean, there's also rumors that they're interested in Tuck too. So it seems like the two sides have talked. So if they're able to land someone like Byfield, potentially, I feel like that could be
Byfield. So bullish on
Sabres' wheelhouse. Yeah.
I am so bullish on Quentin Byfield, man. I always thought that he should have went first overall in that draft to begin with. I genuinely, I think he's what you want, a power forward center. You know, I'm actually not. He doesn't play center, does he? I don't think he plays center.
I think he does every once in a while. Yeah,
I think he jumps back and forth. But he has already signed that. I think he's in the first year of that 5-year deal. So it's not something you got to worry about addressing, his contract anytime soon. Brant Clark, a guy, an up and coming right-handed defenseman, something you've been missing on your blue line. Like, what do you think it would take to get both of those? Let's say both of those guys. You want to target both those guys. What is that going to take if you're Buffalo?
I'd probably, honestly, I think if you offer them a package with Tuck and Cousins and then move around a few other pieces, I could see a move based around Tuck and Cousins for Byfield and Clark, like as a basis. Because I think Tuck kind of adds an extra forward to LA that they kind of need for their roster now that's kind of in their prime. And then I think a guy like Brant Clark, it sounds like they're talking about him being available for like the equivalent of a first round pick. I feel like that's really low for a guy of his caliber. So they can maybe sneak him in there too.
If you can get Brant Clark for a first round pick, I'm not even talking about sending them Tuck then. Do you think a guy like Bowen Byram, maybe with me, put it this way, would you do Byram Cousins for Quentin Byfield?
I'd consider it. I think at this point,
if you can't especially if you don't intend on bringing Byram back, in my opinion, you should bring him back, but it's hard to justify with the holes you have on this team spending almost $30 million on 3 defensemen.
Yeah. I think tonight kind of also he kind of focused in on a guy like Byram not playing on a pair with Dahlin, and he didn't look that great. He's on the ice for a lot of goals against, and I think the Sabres maybe earlier on in the season should have maybe seen what they had in Byram away from Dahlin, because, so far the returns have not been great in what we've seen from him away from Dahlin. Yeah. And I think with Cousins too, obviously he hasn't been great for the last 2 seasons pretty much. So I think those are 2 guys where if you can move them for a win now piece, I think that would be a great move for the Sabres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for when it comes to Byram, it's your point. Like, you probably should have did this earlier in the season. Not when, and again, I think those post-game comments there that were very concerning. Guys were checked out, didn't show up to play. Like, you're moving him away from Dahlin in a time where players aren't really selling out. Guys aren't really, kind of checked out, right? They know they're not making the playoffs. Maybe they're making business decisions for themselves. Already thinking about golfing and where they're going to vacation. I think it would have probably, to your point, a better idea to try that much earlier in the season when there was more on the line and more to, everybody's kind of on board with trying to win. I just don't see that on this team right now, with the exception of a handful of players. Like you saw Paterka, with that diving poke check when the net was empty. Like, who else in the team do you see doing that outside of the obvious? You know what I mean? Who else is giving up on that play? Like, a lot of this roster.
No, yeah. I do think the players definitely wanted accountability heading into the season. But, accountability with, a head coach yelling at you only goes so far when, guys aren't being scratched. Guys aren't at risk of being traded or waived. If you're in the top 9 of the Sabres, they're not going to scratch you to play Sam Lafferty. There's really nobody that's up and coming in the Sabres depths that's coming up stealing a guy's roster spot. So I guess they have accountability in terms of having a head coach that makes them do push-ups, but in terms of an actual threat to their career or roster spot, I just don't think it's there right now.
And for when it comes to Lindy too, it's just kind of surprising, which makes me think there's more that we're not seeing when it comes to ownership and Kevin. How much control does Lindy actually have? Obviously, we know he didn't have. I don't care what they say. He didn't make the decisions about his staff. There's nothing about Marty Wilford that was so sexy to Lindy Rucks. I got to keep this guy around. There's no way. Yeah. Same thing with Matt Ellis, who was sitting next to Kevin Adams up in the press box tonight. So there's nothing about those 2 guys that makes me believe that like Kevin Lindy has full reign to make the decisions he wants to when it comes to this team. I think that I don't know. We're all pretty much on board, right? That Kevin's here next year, right? Like he's here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say he's here, but there's also part of me that's holding out. Like, if the Sabres go like, if they go like 6-12-1 in their next 19, like I just can't see any way they bring him back. Like I know, and we seen it with Botterill too, where they kind of have a last second change in plans. I mean, Botterill was like in the off season, like after they already said they're going to keep him when they decided to fire him. Like I feel like they have to realize that. They're going to have to shake something up in the front office this offseason just to sell some season tickets or just generate any fan interest because, I mean, Adams really isn't a new GM. I mean, they hired him. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going on almost 5 seasons at this point. Like, he's been around here a while.
Do you remember that little book he had on that Sabres Embedded or the Beyond Blue and Gold thing? It was like his first year as a GM. He had his little book of quotes or whatever. I wonder what he's writing in that thing these days. Has that turned into a book of quotes, or is like him just a diary of how miserable he is? Like,
yeah,
it might have been a Kraken game or a Utah game this season, but Kevin has always seemed like to me as a very approachable guy, willing to talk and whatnot. My buddy Mike Carr, who runs these Sabres Warriors Foundation for standing and sled hockey. They did a game after a Sabres game. Brad May and Rob Ray both played in it. It was like 2 different games. It was a fun time. I went there and watched and supported them. But we were all waiting in the lobby to kind of given instructions after the game. And I remember somebody just kind of bumped into me. Like, it wasn't like a hard shove, but it was a shove. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I looked around, and it was Kevin Adams with his head down, just his head down like this, just going through this crowd of people. And by the time anyone realized who it was, he had already made his way into that hall. Like, right when you walk into the arena, that very middle hallway, the double doors, like, he already made his way in. And I'm like, that's Kevin Adams. You wanted nothing to do with us. Absolutely nothing to do with us. I'm pretty sure it was a pretty embarrassing loss. But, like, to your point, like, it's just like, God, man, what is it? I want to be a fly on the wall in his office when he's sitting there by himself. I just want to know what he's got. Like, if you're not like almost borderline delirious at this point with how miserable you are as the Sabres GM, I don't know, man. I agree with you. I just think he's here next year, no matter how the season finishes out, because I just can't see them try. I don't know. I'm giving a bunch of word salad right now. I'm very indifferent when it comes to Kevin. I think he's here next year, honestly.
Yeah, I think if he is here next year, he definitely has to like step up this offseason and make moves. And I still feel like ownership has a ton of involvement in like this kind of GM regime, like definitely more involvement than we've seen in previous ones. So it'll be interesting to see like how much he actually controls and whether or not how much he controls changes this offseason if he's still here. Just because I think this team it's at its breaking point. Like last year was pretty much like a meaningless season. I think you could give the Sabres that after nearly sneaking to the playoffs, but this season, this season had to be something. Like it had to be at least a playoff spot, like in terms of building off that 22-23 season. So just to come out even worse than they did last season is just insane. And it would be difficult to look up because I don't think these stats are available, but I'd love to see like what GM kind of in like a win now mode season that got like under 80 points in a season in his 5th year as GM, like got to keep their job heading into the next season. Like I just feel like it doesn't happen. And I feel like the guys in the locker room too, like they've got to be thinking if there's no serious changes this offseason, like is this franchise even serious about winning, or are they just trying to like hold on to NHL franchise just for those like increased valuations every year and eventually like handing it off to their kids as an asset that's like 10 times more valuable than what they bought it at in 20 years.
Yeah. Apparently we got a tweet from Frank Saravelli. Keep an eye on the New York Rangers on Friday. Sources indicate Rangers have had advanced discussions with Sabres on forward JJ Peterka. Let's see where this goes. Now we just had Jonny Lazarus on before we brought you on for episode 180. He's a big Rangers fan, covers the Rangers, but just covers the league in general. If I'm trading JJ Peterka to the Rangers, there isn't a single guy without a no move clause on that team that I'm interested in. We're talking about Alexi Lafreniere. I don't want Alexi Lafreniere for JJ Peterka. Yeah, Braden Schneider's a nice player. He's a nice young right-handed defenseman. But the only guys I'm interested in are probably what? Panarin. You're not trading Panarin. I don't know, man. Who is it? It's not Vinny Trocheck. I want nothing to do with Vinny Trocheck.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of got that roster where they got a lot of guys that are past their prime or towards the tail end of their prime, and their young players really aren't that great. And even someone like Braden Schneider, I feel like is a little overhyped just because he's a Ranger. I feel like if they trade him for Peterka straight up, that would be a really bad trade in my opinion. But yeah, there's really no one there. And prospects, I mean, they have Gabe Perreault, but that's not really someone you'd want to trade a guy that's already contributed NHL now for.
He doesn't make you better now. The only players on the Rangers right now that don't have a rostered.
I think your mic turned off again.
Hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you again. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So the only players right now that don't currently have a no move clause, rostered players, you got Lafreniere, Will Coyle, Braden Schneider, and Zachary Jones. 2 right-handed defensemen, a left winger, and then a right winger. 2 of those guys are entering their RFA years in Schneider and Jones. So, to me, there isn't a single trade to be made on that roster unless you're looking at what's his face, the other defenseman. I'm sorry, he's a left-handed defenseman.
Condre Miller.
Unless you're looking at him, but we don't need another left-handed defenseman.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. There isn't a player on the team that I want. And if you're Kevin Ebbs, you're really considering trading JJ Peterka to the Rangers. It's got to be something. How are you convincing anybody on that team to move a trade to waive a no move clause?
Yeah, that's going to be tough to do. I mean, you get someone to move from playing in the Madison Square Garden, living in New York City, to come to
President's Trophy winner last year.
Yeah.
You can't get me to buy in. The only reason I'm convinced, I'm actually convinced, is could there be a reason that JJ's even on the market is because maybe, I don't know, maybe he made it known to the organization that he's not willing to sign a long-term deal? Could that be a thing?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. Even with a guy like Byram too, I feel like a lot of people forget, these guys also have to want to sign here too. Even as an RFA, you still have a decent amount of leverage. We saw Sam Reinhart use his RFA leverage to get traded to Florida. So it's not crazy to think that guys like Byram and Peterka could potentially play hardball this offseason. The Sabres could be forced to trade him at a loss. But at the same time, I just don't think if you had to move Peterka, I feel like there's got to be better options out there than the Rangers. I guarantee you a lot of teams could probably beat that Rangers package, whatever it is.
I mean, if you're trading Peterka, there's no way you trade him to the Rangers. There's no way. There's nobody on that roster that I want. That unless, again, you're talking Panarin, but no, you're not trading Panarin. They're not trading Panarin. So I don't know, man. I don't know. And the only other again, I'll again, I got the list here. I should have emailed this to you before we went live. I'll email it to you later. And then I think you said you're going to come on with us tomorrow. There aren't a lot of sexy names on here. I mean, Anaheim, you got guys like Ryan Strome, Troy Terry, Zegras. But again, guys that are entering RFA status. Cutter Goodie, I want nothing to do with him. McTavish, Sam Colangelo, Fabry. I mean, the Bruins, there's nobody. Morgan Geeky, John Beecher, Andrew Peak, Ian Mitchell. These names that they're not very sexy names. In Calgary, you have, I like Matt Coronado. That's a name I like, he's having a decent year for a 22-year-old. Not sure if this is rookie season, but Actually, I don't think his rookie season, but he's 32 points in 56 games. Not a bad player, but like there's just no names out here that makes sense to me that I'm like, yeah, that's a guy that's gonna get me to the playoffs next year.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing with him is that if Peterka plays hardball this offseason and the Sabres aren't interested in futures, then you probably can't even settle for like that first and Levi deal the Sabres got for Reinhart. You're going to try to kind of find a team that will give you a NHL player now for a guy like Peterka. And yeah, maybe that limits the market, and maybe that's why they've been talking to the Rangers. And then I think there are even rumors about them talking to Pittsburgh before, Pittsburgh having interest in Peterka. And like those are probably the two worst teams like asset wise in the entire NHL in terms of fitting the Sabres timeline.
Yeah, I agree. And I look at Detroit, like you hit like the names on this list. You got like Elmer Soderblom, Lucas Raymond. They're obviously not trading Lucas Raymond.
Yeah.
And like the next best player is like Tarasenko. Oh man, I'm sure he's going to get us to the playoffs next year. Like Moritz Snyder, they're not. I don't think they're trading Seider. And next best name is Andrew Kopp. You know, you look at Edmonton. There's not a single name. Evan Bouchard, but obviously he's young. He's entering his RFA year. They're going to bring him back. Florida, we can go back and get Evan Rodriguez back. Like, you know, like I don't know, Dmitry Kulikov. Cool. I think the sexiest team on this list, to me, to your point earlier, is probably LA, because I think that you can make those deals for guys like Byfield and Brant Clark, and you're getting younger, but you're not getting worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think a team with LA too. I mean, they're always pushing. They're always trying to push their timeline forward to win now, and they've always been a team that have dealt some of their youth, and some cases it worked out well for them. So yeah, that's definitely a team I'd be calling this deadline and off season.
Mm-hmm. You know, we got a comment here. What about the maybe you know more about this guy than I do from the Rangers. What about Peterka for Ottman? And there's got to be more to it. I guess Ottman is a guy, you know, Laz, you mentioned to him earlier. He's a guy that, you know, hasn't really cracked the lineup with the Rangers, but has been very good for them in the AHL. I don't know, man. I just don't know. Like, I think you lose this trade if you make a deal with the Rangers, right? There's no way you win this trade. There's just no way.
No, yeah, I mean, just thinking about like how Ottman's doing the AHL, like Peterka like absolutely tore up the AHL. I think he was maybe even younger than Ottman at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to make that trade, you're kind of going backwards in time and just hoping the guy could ever hit Peterka's production.
Yeah. Man. More, dude. I think this is real, man. There are a lot of people I know anybody can have a blue check mark these days, but a lot of reporters coming out of New York City. Renaud Lavoie, reporter, another report, a hockey report I went for TVA Sports. JJ Peterka, New York Rangers could be a thing very soon.
That's not good.
Dude, like who?
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin Adams so much. Please don't do this, Kevin. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I honestly can't imagine what it is unless it's part of a larger deal. But even then, larger deal would probably be even scarier at the Rangers. So
like, I'm pulling up their roster right now. Like I don't know. Rangers. Oh God, I'm gonna lose my mind, man. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna lose my mind. If they trade JJ Peterka to the New York Rangers.
Oh, apparently Arthur Staple tweeted out that the Rangers are not in on JJ Peterka. So I don't even know what's going on right now.
But we have Emily Kaplan saying it, and you have Frank Cervelli saying it, and then this other guy with 150,000 followers saying it. Like, I don't know. I'm looking at their roster, man, and you have GT Miller, Panarin, Zabana. I mean, these guys are. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no names on this list that I want that are like legitimately available. No. Hold on. So
Yeah.
I'm reading. Been told the New York Rangers are not in on JJ Peterka, source says. Okay, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But who do we believe?
I mean, I guess Arthur Staples, he's a Rangers columnist, so maybe he's got some intel.
Yeah, he does. He does columns for the Rangers and the Isles, so I would hope that he's correct.
Yeah, I mean, that'd just be insane if they traded him to the Rangers.
I don't know, man. Another Frank Severely tweet. Sources say the Minnesota Wild are acquiring Justin Brazeau from the Bruins in a deal involving Murat. I'm not going to try and pronounce that last name. And then Jacob Lacko. I don't know how to say that. So, that trade apparently is going down right now between the Bruins and the Wild. So, I imagine it's going to be a fun night throughout the night to see what deals are made. I think. I don't know, man. But yeah, to your point earlier, man, I think the team that I envision most that Buffalo should be focusing on is, if those players are available, is what's happening with LA. Unless there's players out there willing to waive to come to Buffalo, which I don't know. If I'm Kevin Adams, I'm literally sending an email to every single GM. It's like, can I please know which players on your team are where we are not on your no trade list? That should be my starting point if I'm Kevin. I don't know if that's a thing, like if that's active information that GMs have in front of them. Like, I don't know how that works, but that's the first thing I'm doing. Like, who on your team am I not on their no trade list? Everybody? Okay. Well, let's move on to the next team.
Yeah, because I mean, maybe they could. I guess it'd take a unique situation for a guy to wait for Buffalo if they're on their no trade list. Like, I can maybe see, like, if a guy's like not getting ice time and he's like extremely confident in himself and he's like, if I just go to Buffalo and get ice time, I'll show him there. Or if, like, even as simple as someone being from like Southern Ontario, like just wanting to play closer to home and be able to have like friends and family watch them, maybe that could be a situation. Like we saw, like, kind of Jeff Skinner enjoy being in Buffalo just because it was close to Toronto. So maybe those are the only two situations I could think of. But yeah, I think as an NHLer, I mean, your career is just so short, and it's a sport with a lot of injuries too, and your career could be cut short with that as well. Yeah. Like, it's hard to find guys willing to just punt away some years of their career in Buffalo.
I agree. I remember it was Elliot Freeman who might have tweeted it out a couple of years ago too. He made a comment. He's like, Buffalo was starting to come off players no trade lists.
Yeah.
I think it was like right before that year where they missed the playoffs by 1 point. Like, the Sabres are finally kind of starting to turn things around, even with the Jack Eichel stuff with his neck. I mean, I have to admit, you imagine that probably plays into it too, right? What happened with him and the drama around his neck and Buffalo not letting him get that has to play into players.
I think maybe it even helps though, because like if you think about it, like Eichel, I mean, they wouldn't let him get a surgery, so they're like, all right, we'll trade you. And they traded a team that let him get the surgery. They traded him a contender that he won the cup with.
Yeah.
And like same with Reinhart too. Like he wasn't happy here. They traded him a team that was a cup contender and he won a cup. So I think maybe that helps in some way for some guys, knowing that if they come here and they struggle, just say you want out and Sabres will deal you to a cup contender and then you could kind of restart your career there.
Yeah. I don't even know. I don't even know, man. I don't know. Realistically, what do you see happening? If you're being really realistic over the next 24 hours between now and 4 o'clock tomorrow, less than 24 hours, what are there players out there, obviously outside of Brant Clark and Quentin Byfield, that you want Buffalo to focus on? What areas you want them to focus on? And then realistically, what do you think will happen?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I'd definitely be big game hunting even tomorrow. I'd be just shopping around, seeing what's out there. And I mean, only the Sabres know like Byram and Peterka's willingness to sign at Buffalo this offseason. So if there's some questions there, then maybe I'm shopping those guys around at teams too to kind of get a feel for what the market is for them, both right now and in this offseason. So I'd be looking at that. And I mean, then in terms of what I'd expect out of this team, I mean, really not much. I mean, it sounds like Jason Zucker is a guy they're trying to work on a contract with. And I think reports came out that they'd be willing to keep him on the team even if they don't sign a contract before the deadline. So that situation kind of doesn't look like anything will come from it, especially with him being injured. So I don't expect much with Zucker. I mean, Yoki Haru, I think he's probably a guy they try moving, and I don't think he should be that hard to move as a right-handed defenseman. They probably won't get like much more than like a mid-round pick, maybe like a third-round pick in return for him.
Yeah.
But I guess at least it's something for a guy you'd have walking anyway. And then honestly, I could see that being like the only move of tomorrow is just Yoki Haru being moved because Greenway already signed. Zucker's probably going to stay.
Could you imagine if that is legitimately the only move they make between now and 4 p.m. tomorrow? They finally get rid of Yoki Haru for like a third. Maybe you get lucky and it's a second period because he is a right-handed shot defenseman.
Yeah.
But like, could you imagine this fan base if that is legitimately the only move they make?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. It's not going to be a pretty day tomorrow if they don't make a big move.
Oh my God! And if they are dealing Paterka, man, it's again. I think the only team I see it realistically getting the return you want is a team like LA, because I just don't. There's no big game out there that's willing that I see that'd be willing to come to Buffalo. Like,
yeah,
who?
I think. I mean, maybe even I always think about a team like Ottawa Paterka. I know it'd be tough to trade him in the division, but they have Stützle, who we kind of grew up playing with on the German national team. So, I mean, they've got some interesting, like, younger forward depth pieces that, I mean, some of them are even kind of, like, bigger, more physical guys. So maybe they can find something there, but there really hasn't been any rumblings with Ottawa and Paterka.
Yeah. Well, I'll pull up Ottawa right now. So these are the players at Ottawa that currently don't have trade protection. You have Brady Tkachuk, who's making $8.2 million a year. He currently has 47 points in 59 games with 112 penalty minutes. You have Joshua Norris, who will be a UFA in 2031. He has just under $8 million cap hit, 33 points in 53 games. This is the one I was kind of surprised. He signed through 2028 and has absolutely no trade protection at all. And that's Drake Batherson, who has currently 49 points in 61 games. They got Shane Pinto and then Nick Jensen. And those are really the only guys that, again, some guys that are entering UFA or are not UFA, but actually only one player that's entering their RFA status. And that would be Shane Pinto, the big gambler. So,
yeah.
I mean, there are some names, but what names are on there that you would want a JJ Paterka trade? Like that real.
I feel like Batherson. I mean, they'd have to really like Paterka to move Batherson for Paterka, and then Pinto. I feel like is just
Batherson too.
Yeah, I think Pinto is maybe just a step below Paterka in value in terms of his production, but I guess he's kind of a bigger forward, and maybe he makes sense on the Sabres. But yeah, it's going to be tough to find a player for player move for Paterka because there's really not a lot of guys that are playing like Paterka right now that teams are like kind of itching to move.
Yeah, and then you have to have a guy on the team that's willing to come to Buffalo. And I know I keep saying that, but it's true. Like, we're probably on 90% of no trade lists minimum.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I have to imagine. Joshua Norris, I don't think he's going anywhere. And again, to your point, it's tough to do an in-division trade, but and especially for a team like Ottawa, who is I think they're currently in a wild card spot. So, if they're going to trade one of these pieces, they got to be getting something back in return that's going to help them, not hinder them in, making the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the big problem with this deadline as a whole too, is there's so many teams that are in the mix for a playoff spot, especially in the Eastern Conference, that it's definitely a huge seller's market in terms of buying pieces. Like the Sabres may be forced to wait until the offseason on that.
I agree. You got guys like teams like Philly, you got Noah Cates, Tyson Forrester, Bobby Brink, Owen Tippett, Scott Laughlin, who, I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up being a Sabre, Nick Delorier, and then Rasmus Ristolainen having a career year.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something? Could you imagine that? I mean, Rasmus, no trade protection.
Yeah.
So could you imagine?
I honestly like if they're able to like keep his game simplified, like maybe he could even be like an Owen Power partner, because he definitely can't move the puck at all, but he can play physical and he's good at defense if you don't ask him to do like a lot defensively. Like he's good at some of the simple stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Seattle, the names on the list are Kaapo Kakko, Eli Tolvanen, Shane Wright is an interesting name, Riker Evans, and that's it. In terms of Seattle Kraken, I didn't even bother with Toronto because there's nobody, I'm interested on that list that, in a trade at least. St. Louis, there's Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, and Jordan Kyrou. Tampa, who we lost to tonight. You got Brandon Hagel, their right-handed defenseman Moser, Darren Radish, and then Nicholas Perbix. Utah, you have Clayton Keller, Logan Cooley, but those are cornerstone pieces, though they're not trading them. Barrett Hayton, Dylan Gunther, or how do you say his last name? Jack McBain, Sean Dursey, which is a name that's interesting. $6 million cap hit. He's a right-handed shot defenseman, but he's a good defenseman. And then Michael Kesserling, Vancouver. I guess the sexiest name, if you're looking to make a trade, would be Elias Pettersson. But are you even interested in Elias Pettersson now? Like he's having a terrible season, and the ask is just too much.
Yeah, I guess if I was a GM and I had one last big splash move, I'd consider it. Just because, like, if they were truly interested in like Cousins and Byram, Cousins has not been that great either, and Byram's had a good statistic year, but I'm kind of skeptical of him. Like, maybe if your back's against the wall and that's the only move you can make, I'd consider it. But yeah, I think his play as of late has definitely been concerning. But when he's on, I think he's like a top 10 center in the NHL. Yeah. So it's just so tough with him because I think Sabres are a team that should take a risk like that if it's available to them. But at the same time, it's a risk, and it's a pretty big risk too, because that contract's not that movable. If he continues to not perform and plays even worse for the Sabres.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Vegas, you have Pavel. Again, I'm terrible with these last name. Dorofeev. Yeah. 38 points, 61 games. You have Nicholas Roy, Zach Whitecloud, and Caden Korzak. Again, nothing really that pops out there that, you would think as a hockey trade makes you better. I don't think they're trading Zach Whitecloud. So, the Capitals, you got Alexei Protas, Dylan Strome. They're not trading Dylan Strome. He's the number one center. Connor McMichael, Ethan Frank, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Winnipeg, Gabriel Velarde, Cole Perfetti, Nino Niederreiter, Adam Lowry, and Colin Miller, former Sabre. Cole Perfetti, again, 37 points this season. He's a former first-round pick. I could see – I don't think he's a guy – again, he doesn't make you better.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, they're really going to have to, Jordan Kyrou he's a name that you brought up that I think if the Blues decide to rebuild, I'd be going all in on trying to get him somehow.
I love Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah, so, that's maybe one name that could give Sabres fans some hope if he's available, because, Sabres definitely have the assets to get him, and, St. Louis likes their big forwards too, so maybe they'd be interested in a guy like Cousins and whatever else they could package with him.
Yeah, very true. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? Walt, as always, thank you for coming on. We've been live now since the start of episode 180 for about an hour and 45 minutes. But any final thoughts here? As you do, I'm going to continue to peruse through my little cheat sheet here and see if there's any names that I missed that might be. Devils, Dawson Mercer, and Simon Nemec. Yeah, I don't know. But again, those are just getting younger players for the sake of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
know. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's really, probably like my biggest concern right now after tonight is that they trade Peterka to like a team like the Rangers or Penguins that don't have any assets. So, yeah, I guess like kind of my hopes for the deadline is, don't do anything too stupid, but also try to make big moves at the same time. Like, I think it's going to be tough for them to make larger moves just because I think it's definitely a seller's market at this trade deadline with all the teams in the playoff race. I don't think like many teams will be offering some of their forwards for some of the Sabres young guys and picks as they're gearing up for a playoff run. So I think it could be quiet, but yeah, like you said, I feel like if their only move tomorrow is like Yoki Haru for a third, like I feel like there's gonna be an uproar of fans, and then then we're talking about bringing Kevin Adams back again as well. And like if that's the deadline, like how do you convince fans in April that keeping him on board for this offseason is the right move? I think it's going to be an eventful month for the Sabres. I think a lot's going to be determined in this next month or so on how they move going forward.
Here's another thing too. This might change my mind on the whole Kevin Adams being the GM next season. Is if they don't really do anything, you know what I mean? Like if they don't really do anything, maybe it's because maybe that's by design with the owner. Like I don't want you trading pieces or this, that, and the other. Maybe that could be by design from the owner. He's just like, I just don't trust him anymore to make. I mean, I don't know what about this season would made you believe you could trust him until the deadline, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I can get on board with him not being the GM next year if, in fact, all they do is maybe a Yoki Haru deal. I'll say this: if they do, I'll say this: if they do trade Kevin, if they do fire Kevin Adams, who do you want to see step into that role then? Like, who is it? Who's the next guy? You're not firing internal. You're not going to make Donald's the guy.
No, yeah, I feel like, just to regain trust in the fans, I feel like you have to do an external hire. And I kind of look at the platform that some other teams used, or where they kind of get like that older, like hockey ops guy and like a younger GM, and kind of have them both work together, and then eventually hand it off to like the youngerish or newerish GM. Like I really just think this Sabres team kind of needs a bold personality to kind of come in and reshape the franchise. And I think they really need someone that can sell the Sabres to guys who may have the Sabres on their no trade list. Like I think they just really need a big proponent for the Sabres and really just Buffalo as a hockey city. Because I think when this team is on, it's a magical place. And Kevin Adams even got to experience it firsthand on the Hurricanes playing the Sabres in that playoff series. So I think they really just need someone who's bold in their decision-making and is just great at selling the Sabres and really great at selling like how meaningful it will be to play on those Sabres teams that are finally good again and that finally break the playoff drought. Like those guys will be heroes in Buffalo, and there's really not many other markets that offer that. So I just hope they can find a GM that could sell the Sabres like that.
I agree. I definitely agree. That's all I got, man. You're coming on with us tomorrow?
Yeah, I should be free.
Awesome, man. Be a fun day regardless. Maybe we'll just be miserable together, or maybe we'll be celebrating something together. I don't know. So I just you get a tweet in regards to when it comes to New York sports, Stapleton is normally the most more locked in than anyone else. Also, or somebody else is saying that saying that JJ and the Rangers is a no-go, that the Rangers are in fact not in on JJ Peterka. So that's a breath of fresh air. And now it's more reports are coming out that the Rangers aren't in on him, because it just wouldn't make sense to me. And from the Sabres point of view, that deal would not make sense to me. Or maybe it's not Peterka, maybe it's somebody else. I don't know.
Even then, I don't even think I'd want that. I just don't really like what they have to offer.
I mean, I like Braden Schneider. He's a right-handed defenseman, a guy that can fill a hole on the right-hand side. But other than that, that's about it. Players that are realistic at the very least. So
yeah, they definitely have an older roster on the tail end of their playoff runs.
Yep. Agreed. Just remember, everybody, this is brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. If you're looking to get a beer in Buffalo, make sure you make it a Fatty Beer and tell them 2 Goalies 1 Mike sent you. Buffalo Go Apparel. For all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs, make sure you get over to Buffalo Go Co. on Instagram and Twitter. You get this beautiful, beautiful blue collar branded hoodie in all different colors at Buffalo Go. And, of course, the RJ snapback hat. Pay a little homage to the greatest play-by-play guy of all time. You can find them, again, at Buffalo Co. on Instagram and Twitter, at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. And if you have enjoyed this content and you enjoyed what some of the content we brought you tonight, please follow myself at Duane S39. You can follow our buddy here, Walt, at Sabermetrics on Twitter, at 2 Goalies 1 Mike. You can find us on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify at 2 Goalies 1 Mike. And most importantly, if you're following along on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell icon so you know when we go live. And most importantly, hit the like button. Give us some love when it comes to the algorithm. Walt, thanks again for joining, man. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. And as always, go Sabres.